Good afternoon, Cincinnati. Good afternoon, Ohio. Good afternoon, world. Welcome back. This is the Hot Mic Podcast, where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nate the Barbarian, and I'm not alone. Not alone. We got the regular crew today, the three amigos. Kevin Aldridge, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And Phil Hemlich, how you doing?
Are you talking to me now?
Yes,
It's
sir.
my turn?
Yes.
I just want you to know, on behalf of Kevin and myself, you will never be alone.
Good to know. Good to know. We're living in dark days.
Just trying to make him feel good, Kevin. But, you know.
Oh, you're going to clown me in front of my face. Okay. See how you do? See how you do? See, when Iris Rowley comes back on, I'm going to let her have you.
Oh, there it
I'm going to let her have you.
Uh-oh. Now, listen. When she was on, you stood up for me for a while.
I wasn't really sticking up for you, but
and then you went the other way. Then you
I
switched sides.
was always on the same side. It was the same side.
No, you told her she should apologize.
I was just joking with that.
By the end of the show,
I was just joking with the apology part. I knew there was nowhere in hell that Iris Rowley was going to apologize to you. I was just
the fact I'm very happy. Just the fact she didn't cuss me out. You know, alone is I'm happy with.
You and me. So, but yeah, I gotta reach out to Iris and see if she's available to come on the show. So, just watch yourself, Phil. Watch yourself. To the audience, I am, as we speak, going to add a link to both YouTube. There it is on YouTube and Facebook. If you want to join the conversation, it's real easy. You hit the link. And you can come on screen just like you see myself and Phil and Kevin. If you don't want to be on screen for whatever reason, you just want to use your audio, well, then turn your camera off. Turn your camera off. Cool. Come on in. All are welcome. The only thing I ask is watch the language. You know, it's a family show. Children are watching or listening.
Who said it was a family show? Where'd you come up with that?
I said it was a family show. I want everybody to be able to watch.
You didn't ask me and Kevin if it was supposed to be a family show.
Yeah, me and Kevin agree with this. So
all right.
We're on the same page. So other than that, it's all good. Your opinion is your opinion. We can agree to disagree, although it's very hard to do these days. Very hard to do for me. I'm learning. Anthony writes, "Hey, creatives." Okay. Cruther writes, "Good afternoon, crew." Anthony writes, "You forgot your name, Phil."
No, it's Phil. I haven't forgotten it.
Yeah, you haven't forgotten. Okay. Jerome writes, "Good afternoon, 513." And good afternoon, everybody. Hey, take a second and share this. Just take a second and share it. And we'll get straight into it. I don't know where to start. Why don't we start where we kind of picked off last show was on Tuesday and talk about this local story with the man who was stabbed while he was in his home in the OTR. It seems like there's been some development. So, I mean, you know, I sent you both in our group chat, you know,
and let me just say, I'm not
going
to throw out, you know, that I told you so. Okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm not that kind of guy.
Yeah, you're not, and I can tell you're very humble.
The facts,
but you did. The
facts bear me out.
You did.
Okay.
The facts. Well, I mean, to your point, you know, and it was echoed by some people that were in the audience on Tuesday that perhaps something happened with the state. I don't know where it is right now because initially what happened was
that they wouldn't tell the Cincinnati police this guy was here. that he had cut his ankle thing 3 months before, whenever it was. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the whole story because, like, immediately after Tuesday's show, you had the city responding saying, hey, the state didn't let us know. But since then, the state has said, hey, we've done what we're supposed to do. They have some type of alert that goes out in those kind of situations. They're saying that they did that and putting the blame back on the Cincinnati Police Department. So at this point, I don't know who's responsible. I was listening to the Lincoln Ware show, and I haven't been able to corroborate it by looking at a story myself. But I'm listening to the Lincoln Ware show today, and he said that the city was going to divert some of its overtime police staff to the OTR for the next 2 weeks in response to what happened. Have either one of you heard that?
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay. Okay, so again, I'll just put it that way. I haven't heard it, so I can't corroborate it. I don't know if he was reading I tried to search for it. I couldn't find a story about that. But, I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, hey, this kind of stuff happens in the black community. There was a recent shooting where a house got all shot up, a 4-year-old was killed, and they're saying, hey, there's a double standard here.
Yeah, it doesn't. It does seem a little bit strange, and it does seem a little bit sort of knee jerk and reactionary. I mean, this is the type of thing, and I don't say that necessarily like to disparage it, but it's in the news. We talked about the nature of who the victim is, perhaps someone who's a little bit more prominent, a little bit more money and influence, and so this is what you tend to see in these situations where the city kind of reacts to being called out by certain individuals and certain groups. I mean, look, the wife in this situation was didn't bite her tongue in terms of her criticism about how the city has sort of fallen down on this. So if it is true, that just seems to me to just be a reaction to this woman's criticism of the police department, and the city may be trying to save face or look good in the light of that by putting extra police protection in there. But I mean, I guess what I would say is this seems like it's kind of like a random act of violence, right? Like I'm still unclear of all of the circumstances behind how the stabbing took place, what was going on behind that. Was this a random crime? Was there something going on that we don't know about? I mean, I think to me, there's still a lot of pieces of information about this that I don't understand, but it does seem like this is sort of in response to this widow's criticism of the police, if in fact that is something that they're doing. And it does raise questions if you're living in other communities where you're dealing with crime, whether it's random or gun violence or anything else. It does beg the question, why is Cincinnati doing this in this case versus other neighborhoods that are, just as crime ridden?
Yeah, I think you explained it pretty well, though. I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I read that Mayor Avtab Pureval met with the widow, and I have no problem with that. And I was thinking, does he do that with all of the victims of homicides?
Doubtful.
Because if not, he should.
Yeah.
If not, they should. I mean, that should be the new standard. I mean, because to do otherwise would to play right back into what you said is that, like, this ain't really equal. It depends on who you are and how much money and influence you have and what zip code you live in. And I think that's a bad look, especially in the blue city.
Yeah.
It's a blue city.
I mean, let's be real. Look, Mayor Pureval is a politician, and that's not to say that he does not have genuine feelings for this lady. But look, she called him out. She said, hey, I need to hear from the mayor. These people need to give me answers. And it got picked up by the press. I mean, it's picked up by everybody. This is a huge story. And so I think for those reasons alone, the mayor probably felt compelled that he needed to meet with this lady. Not saying he wouldn't have done it anyway. I don't know that. But I think that it's not unreasonable to say that because of the situation and because of the press, he felt compelled to do it in this situation. Whereas when you see in other situations that might not get as much press or any press at all, he's not going to be responsive in the same way. I don't disagree with you that perhaps this isn't a good practice or that it should be the standard. But just knowing the way that most of these politicians and stuff move, I mean, as busy as they tend to be, how practical is it to expect that they would be able to do this in every situation? I don't know. But I definitely think the profile of this case influenced the mayor's reaction and response, and the fact that he was called out directly by this witness.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. He probably spent a whole lot of time, but then, some might say, that's what you should be spending a whole lot of time on, right? Like if the mayor by mandate had to meet with the families of each and every homicide victim, the way he met with the homicide victim of the man in the OTR, okay, well, if you don't want to spend all that time, fix the problem then. Do something about it. That's one way of looking at it. Phil's making faces.
Well, Nathan, not that you would ever make a racial issue out of every issue. Not that you would do that. But I think it'd be a bit of a stretch here. You know what this reminded me of about him meeting with the widow? I don't think he'd mind my saying this, I'm not a huge Mike DeWine fan, but Pat, when I was on council or commission with Pat DeWine, Pat told me something. He said that this is during the Iraq War. Anytime a person from Ohio was killed in that war, Mike DeWine, I don't know if he was a senator at the time or governor at the time, but he would always go to their funeral. Anyone. And I respect that. And actually, I don't know how often he does it, but I think it would be an important thing for the mayor to go to the family of any murder victim.
I think you muted Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems fair to me. I mean, I know it's an election year, and I think Kevin he laid it out there perfectly. What the circumstances are. Yeah, all that influenced, but it's like, man, there was a whole house that was recently shot up. The whole house was shot up with families and everything.
Well, there's a little difference, though. There's a difference because the point that the widow made was that there was responsibility. The city had some responsibility for this. And given that situation, I think it's understandable for the mayor to meet with somebody where there's an issue about what the city could have done. So I think that's different from just anybody else who's been murdered.
No.
Yeah,
no, it's not, because I've heard the mayor say it's not. I've heard the mayor say that his number, he in this situation, he took accountability for any and all crime and homicides. He said, "Look, I'm the mayor. It's on me."
Right. I think that's a very humble thing and noble thing to say, but it doesn't get to your point of he should meet with every victim, or your point that you seem to be saying that he only meets with the white widows. Isn't that kind of what you were suggesting?
No, I never brought up race,
and I don't.
But I did imply it.
Well,
but I did imply it. So you're right. Race is a factor for me in this, for certain.
Well, here's where I would kind of disagree with that, because I think Mayor Pureval would show up for it. Again, I think this has to do more with the profile of the story and the coverage of it than it does the individuals. I think if it were a controversial case involving the Black family, under similar circumstances, I think the mayor would show up for that as well if the story was high profile enough. I think that's where I say, like, I think part of the
I don't disagree.
Yeah,
with
I think
that.
part of the politics that comes into this, and again, I hate to frame it this way because it makes it sound like his concern is disingenuous. But look, let's just get to the reality of it. Like I said, he's a politician. He's the mayor of the city, and there are some things that demand your presence. Some things maybe even that you would like to ignore or skip out on, but you quite simply can't because the spotlight is too hot. And I think that this was one of those cases where you've got a widow who's called out the mayor specifically and the city specifically, and there are questions around it. I think if he had ignored it, it wouldn't have been good for him politically. It would have made him look bad politically. So I think, taking the human dimension of it aside, and maybe this is the cynical journalist in me, is that, politicians gonna politic. And, that's a big part of this story here. He basically, needed to show up here in this case, or it was going to be bad optics. It was going to be a bad look. And if there's one thing Mayor Pureval
Right.
cares about, it's optics. And I don't think, I don't
Okay.
think that I'm out of school or out of line for saying that.
Yeah, but I don't dispute anything you're saying. My issue is with this move, in my opinion, a new standard has been set. And that is the expectation is that the mayor should meet with the grieving family of all homicide victims moving forward. Period. We should look at it as if it is bad optics and it is unacceptable if he does anything less than that. Why is he so special? If I lost somebody I loved, I
Well,
lost
I'm
my
going to
person
again
that loved,
say
I lost
because
them as much as
I'm going to
anybody
again
else.
say that there was an issue raised about the city's specific responsibility in this case. Now, I think the facts, now that we know that the parole people never informed the police, it turns out I don't think the police did do anything wrong. The people in Columbus are the ones who screwed up, but
Which is what I
nonetheless,
said on Tuesday.
what?
Which is what I said on Tuesday,
But
right? So actually, I was right.
No. I was the
Yeah, because on
Don't
Tuesday,
get
what
me.
I said
I was
was,
the one who
no,
said,
yes,
did
Bill.
they inform the police about him breaking off his ankle thing? That's what I said. And it turned out
Right.
they in fact failed to do that. But what I'm saying is, at the time that Pureville met with her, that wasn't known, and it could have been a mistake by the Cincinnati police. Turns out it wasn't. So I think that is a little different. I think that justifies him wanting to meet with her to kind of say, hey, if they screwed up, then I bear the responsibility.
Yeah.
You can make that argument for any homicide inside the city limits that the city is responsible on some
You can't
levels.
make it.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
you know
can
what I
because
like in Mayor Pureball saying that every crime in this city. Look, I mean, again, I'm gonna sound so cynical on this, but I just believe this to be the truth. Like, there are just some things that when you hold a certain position, that people expect you to say, even if it's not true. Here, I'll liken this to the example of Joe Burrow a couple of weeks ago saying that, hey, it was on him the reason why the Bengals didn't make the playoffs last year. Now, that's something that he's got to say as the quarterback of the team, but nothing could be farther from the truth. I mean, that dude did everything he possibly could last year. The defense was horrible. Anybody with eyes who watched the Bengals game last year knows it wasn't Joe Burrow's fault that the Bengals didn't get in the playoffs. But he has to say that as the quarterback of the team. It's like if he had came out and said, hey, man, it's the defense, people would have killed him, even though it was the truth, because you expect the quarterback to say that. You expect the mayor to say, hey, every crime that happens in this city is on me. But that nothing could be farther from
Well,
the truth.
I don't know that you always expect politicians to say that. Take a look at the guy in the White House. When has he ever
Yeah,
accepted responsibility for
but
anything?
that's part of the reason why he gets killed in some circles is because he doesn't do that. He doesn't fall on the sword like what generally what people in those positions do. They don't pass the buck. They usually say the buck stops with me, even if that's not true. And so I look at what the mayor said, and it's what he's got to say as the mayor. It's what he's expected to say, but nothing could be farther from the truth. It's not all on him, the crime situation that Cincinnati has.
But don't you agree it was the right thing for him to say, though, which I think it was?
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying it's the right thing to say because it's what you expect him to say, not because it's true. That's all I'm saying. I think that's part of the politics.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but I think anybody out there, any citizen in Cincinnati will tell you that they look at their local government, they look at city council, they look at the Cincinnati Police Department, and they look at the mayor, and we hold them responsible for creating an environment in which we don't become victims
Yes.
of crime. That's number one job. So if AvTab can meet with the homicide victim in the OTR, moving forward, he should meet with every last one of them. Every last one of them. Until they create an environment in which he don't have to do that. And I don't think that's unfair or unreasonable.
I don't think that's
the number one thing that people want their local government to do for them. Is keep them safe.
I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it would. I think it would probably for him be good politics. It would play well. I mean, just like Phil said, hey, Mike DeWine going to the funeral of every military person who died in on duty or in action. I mean, that's a good look for DeWine. It's gonna earn him a lot of praise, appreciation from those families. So yeah, I mean, I think from a general optics politics standpoint, from perhaps a right thing to do standpoint, it wouldn't be bad for him to be able to do that. Wedging that into your schedule. I mean, I don't know what the mayor's schedule is and what he's dealing with and how reasonable or unreasonable that expectation is, but I don't disagree with you that it wouldn't be a bad look. It wouldn't be a bad look for anybody on city council, any of the city council members or the mayors to do it. It would be a sign that might say to folks that you care about what you're doing. But on the flip side of that, you also got to produce some results, because at a certain time, if you keep showing up to family members' houses and funerals and the problem ain't getting no better, then it does look more like you're just doing it for show.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I think they should do it, because it does sort of put a pressure on you. I mean, light some fire on some people out here, because nobody wants to be a victim of crime. And there's so many questions about that OTR case. Like, how did the man even get inside the house? Did he break a window? Did he force his way in somehow? I mean, I'm sure all the details will come out at some point as we try to, and I only ask, not in any way to diminish the situation. I only ask because I'm trying to figure out how we keep ourselves safe in all our neighborhoods, for the people that live.
Out of curiosity, Nathan, when you say and I agree with you that until he makes the city safe, I guess what I would say is, okay, what can he do to make the city safe? Now, I would say, I've always believed this, to put more police on the street. Okay, are you agreeing with that, or are you saying we need to open up some more recreation centers or midnight basketball or something? Just curious.
You're so cynical. Yeah, I'm saying that, dealing with crime is not and you already know this. I mean, you were a legislator. You know what, you were in that situation. I mean, I'm going to say the obvious, but I'll go ahead and say it since you asked the question, is, all of the above, Phil. Yeah, I mean, we might do some targeted sweeps. We might divert police resources from one neighborhood to a hotspot here or there. But if we're talking about the future of Cincinnati, that's a long-term investment. That's a long-term investment back into our neighborhoods. And sometimes it might look like neighborhood basketball. And it most certainly should and will look like funding for after-school programs. It also looks like making sure we invest in the moms and the dads so that the home environment is a stable place that produces the type of young people who will be the type of adults that's going to lead this nation. That's what I would say. Yeah. Pretty good. Okay. Can we agree on that? Yeah, we're making some progress.
I didn't say I agree, but that's okay. Continue.
I can see it on your face.
Yeah, right.
Local Democrats announced their endorsements. They endorsed 10 people to potentially, 9 people to be on city council. Some say they should have endorsed 10. But my question about it is just in general, like there's some people that have a problem with the endorsement. Like they feel like at this point, it's a blue city. What you're basically doing is you're kicking out any other potential people, because a lot of folks are going to get that endorsement and they're going to take that into the booth with them and they're going to vote straight Democrat. I'm just asking right now, like, is this thing with the Democrats and the majority, the majority they have, is it working? Is it a net positive or negative for the people of Cincinnati in your observation to this point?
Well, let me say first that what the Democratic committee in Cincinnati is doing is no different than what the Republican committee is doing or anybody else. All of these committees have slates of candidates or candidates that they endorse. I mean, look no further than the golden Midas touch of the Donald Trump endorsement. If Donald Trump endorses somebody, chances are, particularly here in Ohio, that Republicans are going to fall in line and vote for that individual, whether they know anything about him or not. To me, this is less about the Democratic committee and more about voters in general, right? You can't blame the Democratic committee for voters who are not willing to put in the work to learn about the candidates and make up their own mind about who the best candidate is to vote for. I get sick of people wanting to blame it on the Democratic slate or the Democratic committee for their own laziness, right? if you don't want to put in the work to find out who the candidates are, and you just want to get your card when you go to the voting booth, and you just don't vote on that and don't have a clue who any of these people are, that is on you. You are being I'm going to say it. You are being a bad, unproductive citizen and voter, because you are not voting your mind. You're voting somebody else's mind. And there's too much groupthink in Republican and Democratic Party circles. Be an independent person. I'll be damned if somebody is going to dictate to me who I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote for who I think is the best person. Sometimes that might be in the past. Sometimes that's been Republican candidates, not more in the immediate future or the immediate
Hold on, let me
present.
get that. You're saying at some time in the past it was a Republican candidate?
Absolutely, because I know people. I know people who have been
Oh, I
close
know.
friends.
Like you mean like Phil Heimlich? But is there anybody
Well,
else?
no, I didn't. I never voted for you before because I didn't know you. I didn't know you before.
Oh, thanks a
Maybe
lot.
I might consider it now. I
Oh,
might
that's
consider
big
it
of you.
now. But I say that to say, do your own homework. Think for yourself. Don't be lazy and sit back and rely on a Democratic committee or anybody to tell you who to vote for. And so people who want to blame the Democratic committee for the slate, you're blaming the wrong people.
Yeah. What he just said. I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything to
Yeah,
add.
I just say that Bill Maher did a great routine one time. Actually, he showed a clip of when Jay Leno or somebody who works for him would do on the street interviews to show, frankly, how the way he put it, how ignorant the American people are. And like the one question they say, a group of people around, and the guy goes, "Now, who was the first man to land on the sun?" And they're sitting there thinking, Lance Armstrong. I mean, this is the level. I mean, and I forget some of the other questions, but I mean, it's kind of a sad thing. And I think Kevin is right that you don't have to be, you know, into it like that's all you read about. But for God's sakes, I mean, it's your country. Can't people keep up? I tell my kids, look, just listen to, like, NPR has a thing called Up First in the morning. It's 10 minutes, okay, of news. Why not just listen to that so you kind of know what's going on in the country?
Keeping it local, Connie Pillage is the first Democrat to be prosecutor here in Hamilton County in nearly a century. And think about that, nearly a century. It's one of the reasons. Anyway, well, she is in a bit of a controversy because in a now deleted post on her personal Facebook page, she posted something saying that she'll be attending an upcoming anti-Trump protest and referred to the president as a, quote, incompetent, childish, selfish, uneducated jackal. Well, when you do that, MAGA comes after you, and they've been coming after her. Was that a mistake by the Hamilton County prosecutor, Connie Pillage? Was she out of bounds with
Totally.
that?
And not the fact that she would speak up about the attacks on democracy. I think somebody like that has the position and the stature to speak up. But she's using the kind of language Donald Trump uses. I mean, that is it's like, was it one of the political, I think David Niven or whoever was interviewed, a political scientist, said she's basically stooping to the same level as Trump does. So I mean, and you know what happens when somebody does that? It just makes basically that lowers those of us who are not supportive of Trump. It lowers us to his level. And even though it's one person, I'll guarantee you she will be quoted. She may be quoted around the country on that. I don't know. And it just,
Yeah, oh, sure. I'm
yeah,
sure she will
and
be.
it just gives fuel to the pro Trump people. So I think it was very stupid on her part.
Yeah, I think this illustrates the pickle that Democrats are in, particularly Democratic candidates and Democratic office holders are in. I agree with, a lot of what Phil said. I agree with what David Niven said. I think Connie Pillage, um, allowed herself to descend into Trump world. And she will be applauded by a lot of people on the left who want Democrats to be more vocal in that way, to stand up and push back against MAGA and what she's saying. And then there's going to be some folks in the middle who think like Phil, disaffected Republicans and maybe some liberals who lean more toward the center, who are going to find this distasteful and who are going to be turned off on it, and who are going to say that Connie Pillage should be above these types of politics, particularly as the prosecutor, someone who's in charge of disseminating the law. Now, what MAGA says and what the Republicans say matters very little, because they're doing what they're expected to do. Their hypocrisy knows no bounds. It's like, how do you stand up and criticize Connie Pillage when your standard bearer says what she says and worse? So the Republicans and the MAGA crowd have zero credibility when they want to cry about the integrity of the office and how Connie Pillage should be acting. It's laughable. I just want to slap every one of them that stand up and make those comments and say, you got to be joking me, because you look ridiculous when you say that when Donald Trump is doing what he is doing. You have no ground to stand on.
But you agree, though, it tends to normalize Trump's behavior.
Well, it does. I mean, and I think that's the unfortunate thing about this era that we're in, and the pickle that Democrats are in, right? Because if they don't push back stronger, they look weak. And folks on the left are going to say, hey, man, you guys are not looking strong enough. Why aren't you saying more? And this is the jam that Democrats find themselves in, when they either look weak when they try to go high when they go low, to borrow the Michelle Obama line. They look weak and they lose credibility. They lose something in the sight of their own voters. And then when they go low with Donald Trump, they're going to get criticized by the right and MAGA, and they're going to turn off the folks in the middle. And this is the pickle that Democrats find.
Can I give an example that I wanted to bring up anyway, that I think reflects a great example of being tough and standing up for what's right, standing up to Trump, but doing it in a respectful fashion and appropriate. I would urge any of our viewers or anyone who hasn't listened or watched Gavin Newsom's speech when Trump ordered the troops into LA, and yesterday when a judge, at least for the time being, turned over the National Guard from Trump, said it was unconstitutional or illegal for him to do that. If you listen to that press conference yesterday, it's about 20 minutes. This guy, I know maybe he's running for president, I don't know, but I'll tell you something. His words were powerful. They were powerful. And nobody listening to that would say that he was weak. He was tough. I'm telling you, he said things like, and everything he said, even though it was directed at Trump, he didn't do it in a kind of fashion. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like with that kind of language. One of the things he said is Donald Trump likes to creates a problem, and then he wants to be a hero to solve it. And he said that so well. For example, here Trump is the guy who started all these deportations, but now that the farm owners and the owners of factories and stuff, now that they're complaining about the fact that their employees are being deported, and now Trump wants to say, well, I'll fix that situation. We got to cut down on deporting the farm workers, okay? I mean, what a ridiculous where he creates the problem and then he acts like he wants to save it. I just thought Gavin Newsom did a magnificent job of standing up for what was right, doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah, you are 100% right when it comes to Gavin Newsom. A lot of people are criticizing him because he started a podcast and he kicked it off by bringing in, some MAGA folks that people thought were kind of reprehensible and shouldn't have been platformed. But it might end up that his tactic might end up putting him in the White House. We'll wait and see. And I understand your point. I get it. But let me take it back to Connie Pillage. When I looked at what she actually said, and people could take it any way they want to, but I don't think she said anything wrong at all. When I look at it, considering the man we're talking about, Donald Trump.
It's name calling, though.
It's not name calling. It's not name calling when it's true, right? She said the president is incompetent. He is incompetent. She said that the president is childish. He is childish. She said that the president is selfish. He is selfish.
Okay, pardon
She
my
said,
language.
she
What did she
said that
say?
he
What did she
hold
say?
on. Let me finish it. Let me
What did she
finish
say?
before
He's a
you
piece of
cut me
shit.
off,
Pardon
Phil.
my language.
She let me finish before you cut me off. She said that he was an uneducated jackal. And I thought, that's an interesting thing to call somebody a jackal. So I looked it up. Here's what the AI says that it means to call someone a jackal: opportunistic, base collaborator, subservient. Now, the last one, not so much, but I think what she said was spot on. Spot on.
Yeah, so here's where she kind of lost it, Nathan, and I don't disagree with you on any of that. And in fact, I don't necessarily disagree that Connie Pillage, um, you know, is necessarily wrong in anything that she said about Donald Trump. But I think this is, if she'd have left it there, I think she would have been okay. Here's where I think she got in trouble is when she went on to say, even worse, he is backed up by vile humans whose acts and advice indicate they want to destroy our democracy.
That's a fact, though,
So
Kevin.
here's the problem with it. Well, here's the problem with that statement is that it's very general. Like it's very general and it's not specific enough. It leaves the door open for people who want to criticize her and say, "Oh, she's talking about every voter who came out and supported Donald Trump." This is exactly what MAGA and
But
the
they're going to do that
Republicans
no
are
matter
trying
how
to do
she
there.
said it, Kevin.
I get you, but we're just talking about the
I'm just saying, but
criticism
that
here. We're
criticism,
talking about
no
how
matter
this is.
what she said, they were going to say that about her no matter
No,
what.
that's not true. That's
That's
not true. And the
absolutely
more
true.
specific, the more specific and direct you are, the more specific and direct you are, the more you can diffuse that. As somebody who works in words every day and oftentimes thinks about whenever I write something, how are people going to try to come back and dissect or misquote me or misinform? Now you can't check for everything, but there are certain things that you could do. She could have said very specifically, "Hey, I'm not talking about every Donald Trump voter," right? You could put that out there and inoculate yourself from some of that. You can specifically talk about the vile humans that you're talking about. Name names, right? She named Donald Trump. Name names. So there are ways that you can, and this is why I say she was doing this in a stream of consciousness post on social media. She probably wasn't even thinking about it. She was probably reacting in a moment of emotion, which we know always gets us into trouble on
Kevin,
social media. But she could have put if her idea was to put out a statement, she could have put out a more thoughtful and direct. All of the things that you just said that we just praised Gavin Newsom about doing, Connie Pillage was capable of doing.
And why
the
did she
same
take
thing,
it? She
but
took
she
it
didn't.
down. What if she didn't feel she did something wrong? Why'd she take it down?
I never would have took it down if it was me, because she did nothing wrong. And like I keep saying, Kevin, it doesn't matter how she worded it. When she criticized, that second part doesn't really matter all that much. It's the first part. You're criticizing Donald Trump. Once you criticize Donald Trump, MAGA attacks. And it doesn't matter what the excuse is, they were going to attack her. So, when I looked at it, that's how she felt. And why is it Republicans, man? You go to some of these red cities and red states, these elected Republicans are saying the craziest things ever. That's okay. She expressed her mind as a Democrat. All of a sudden, she needs to take it down. She should have stood on business. If that's how you felt, that's how you felt, and you ride it all the way
So
out.
you're saying people should
Period.
just say their feelings, just let your feelings go. Is that what
Well,
you're
I'm
saying?
saying in this
You don't think
case,
there should be a what's the word I'm looking for, a filter before we just say it? Like, for example, if I'm with someone who's overweight, I should say you're fat, right? Because that's true. It's true,
listen,
right?
I don't know. All I'm saying is that in this case with Connie Pillage, once she made the decision to put her opinion out there, I read what she said. I don't see it's no big deal. That's how she feels. Period. Get over it.
And and you're right, Nathan. Look, I mean, here's what I agree with Phil. If Connie Pillage felt like she didn't do or say anything wrong, she should have left it up. The fact that she took it down says that on some level, she feels like the criticism that she's receiving, that it's in her best interest to try to disassociate herself or distance herself from that. That's her. Now you can feel. I mean, the average, like I said, there are a lot of people on the Democratic side who will cheer what Connie Pillage said, say, good, I'm glad she said it, right? But then there are also going to be those people in the middle who are going to be like, hey, look, this is a turnoff for me. I don't like the name calling. I don't
I
like
think
this
you're
or that or the
misjudging
other.
the
It's the
middle.
same thing that
I
I
think
don't.
you're misjudging the middle.
Look, Nathan, I'm not talking about everybody on the middle. I'm saying that there are people all across the spectrum, right? There are going to be people in the middle who are not going to like what she said. Phil is one of them. Phil is one of them. You're hearing from a guy who says that. The
Phil is
problem
not
I
in the
have,
middle,
Nathan,
though. Phil is on the right.
you want to dismiss anything you disagree
But
with and
Kevin,
say that like it can't exist.
Phil is not
And
in the middle.
that's just not real.
Phil is on the right.
Okay, but even more so.
So
The point.
Look, where Phil is nowadays in our politics, that's considered the middle. Any center right Republican or center right Democrat or independent is considered the middle. You've got your far extremes. You got your far extremes. Then you got people who are kind of not far extreme, but they're left. And then you got people who
Phil
are
is
right.
absolutely on the right. He's just anti-Trump. But in terms
Oh,
of
hold it. Are you saying? Oh,
policy,
I'm sorry. I didn't understand. You said Phil is always right. Is that what you said? I misunderstood.
yeah, Phil is always on the right
No.
politically.
You not. I
He's
thought you
just
just said right.
anti-Trump.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so he's not a good example. He's not in the
I'm
middle.
an excellent example because the point is, if she had written that without the name calling and just had spoken it frankly, kind of the way Gavin Newsom did, I would have thought it was great because I think the prosecutor in a county has a platform and is highly respected.
Yep.
And for someone like that to speak out against Trump, I'd agree with 100%. But just like Kevin said, because of her language, I was really disgusted by it because I know what happens when people criticize Trump with that kind of language. They basically they normalize what the MAGA people and Trump are saying.
No, y'all don't understand it. That is the new normal. They're not normalizing it. That's the normal. And she didn't call him any names. She just described him. She didn't call him any names. She described him.
Read the quote. Can you have it, or I'll pull it up? Read the quote that she said. Do you have it?
Yeah, I've got what's in the paper. It reads,
The thing about the jackal.
An incompetent, childish, selfish, uneducated jackal.
So that's not name calling?
No, that's a description of Donald Trump. Yeah, that's a description of Donald Trump, and we all know it. So let's stop playing this game like what she said was so bad. All she did was describe the man's actions. She described his actions.
She
What
helped
we
the Trump
see it every
side.
day.
What she did. She helped Trump.
But I will concede that, you're an elected official. And so obviously you got to move a little differently, right? And perhaps that does mean that you change your approach just a little bit. But the only people who are bent out of shape about this is MAGA. That's it. Nobody else cares about this.
I'm not MAGA, and I'm bent out of shape about it.
Really? I don't believe you.
You don't believe that I'm not MAGA? You don't believe that I'm
I don't believe you that bent out of shape about it. I think you might be. I feel like you think it was impolite, but I don't really think you really that upset about it. I really don't.
I mean, and they're not, and most people are not. People will move off of this very quickly. They will. Next week, nobody will be talking about this, and they'll forget about it. And the only time it may come up again is in some campaign commercial that the Republicans will use against Connie Pillage the next time she wants to run for office. I mean, and at the end of the day, when it comes down to binary choices, like, look, this is where we're at, and this is part of the problem with where we're headed as a country, is because when it comes down to the binary choice between Republican or Democrat, in the end, it doesn't really matter what you say. And to some extent, it doesn't really matter what you do. It just matters how much more the other side hates, one side hates the other. And that's basically what it boils down to. I mean, we're seeing this more and more. Gone the bygone era of statesmanship and where politicians and people were above this sort of thing. That's a wrap, And I mean, I think there are people like me and Phil who cling to those bygone days, and you want them to come back. But I think that unfortunately is water under the bridge because people don't care. They're not holding these politicians accountable for what they say and what they do. It's all about can I stick it to the other side? And I hate the other side. And that's unfortunate. And I don't know how we get out of that if we ever do.
Oh no, we cooked. We cooked. You know, it is what it is at this point. But we shall say. Phil, are you still going to DC tomorrow?
Yes, I
Trump's parade?
am. I am going. Yes.
Are you going to go and put your eyes on the parade itself?
No, I am. I'm not. I have a social engagement at that time.
Okay.
But I want to say something about that. Not my social engagement. You know, I'll tell you what. You guys all remember. It's a powerful, powerful image of when the Tiananmen Square thing happened, and that guy who they call Tank Man who stood in front of that tank. You remember? You guys remember that, right?
I do remember it.
It's an enduring image, probably more powerful than almost anything that happened. Sad how terrible as it was that day. Here's what I don't like. These rallies they're having around the country that I think are great. No kings rallies. Why they say, well, we're not gonna do it at the actual parade because we don't want to create a show of force or something. We don't want to. Hey, I think that's totally stupid. I think the people who want to protest, they ought to go there and they ought to do what Tank Man did and get right there and let. Trump says, do you hear what he said? He said they're going to get hit with real force, and he didn't differentiate between peaceful and non-peaceful. And so, going back to the civil rights situation, Martin Luther King, in effect, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he staged things. He staged things knowing that those cops were going to come and beat those protesters, hit them with water cannons and dogs. He did that because he knew that the images that the whole country would see would change the kind of the attitudes of so many people in this country, which I think led to the politicians having the guts to pass the civil rights legislation. Easy for me to say, I'm not going to do it, but I don't understand if people are going to protest. Why not protest right there and call Trump's bluff?
Nope, Phil, that would be the dumbest thing that they could do, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't disagree with anything that you said about MLK's strategy and the impact that it had on the conscience of America. But the mistake that you're making is the same mistake that I just made, or I just said we were making a few minutes ago about the statesmanship in that bygone era. The conscience of America is dead. The conscience of America is dead. And the way that things are polarized today, if you go down there and Trump unleashes the military on those folks, there are going to be those on the side that say that they deserved it. The narrative is going to get twisted, just like January 6th. People are not going to have the reaction to it that they had when MLK did it.
Oh, there was a strong reaction at the time. It's just that ultimately all those politicians and Trump's base, he gaslit it. But at the time, there was horror.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It would be the same thing with this. You're not going to get the same sort of attack of conscience and heart that people had back then. These are different times and it's a different era, and it would be interpreted an entirely different way. I think the approach that they're taking is the smart one. Is you draw attention away from what Trump is doing. If you go up and you show up and you're giving Donald Trump exactly what he wants.
I don't think he wants that. I don't think he does.
He does want it.
He absolutely does, Phil. Absolutely, he does. He's chopping at the bit. He's praying.
Well, you could say the same thing for Bull Connor, and I would also say that if you did some polling, I don't know what they did, what it was.
We ain't living in Bull. Well,
if you go to
think about this.
Go back to 1963 or 64. You don't think the country was very split between civil rights supporters and racists? I'd say there was.
I'm not talking about
polarization.
Again, Phil. I'm not talking about the split. We're talking about the consciousness, people's sensibilities. They are not the same.
But isn't there a middle? I'm not talking about the MAGA. Isn't there a middle, Kevin, that you would say is persuadable?
Yeah, I would have said that. I would have said that in this past election, in that middle elected.
They were persuadable. They were persuaded by Trump.
Okay, and what does that tell you, Phil? In light of January 6th and everything that they've seen, 34 felony convictions,
in
people were
20 okay,
still
well, in
able to be persuaded.
2020,
So you think people showing up to a military parade? I mean, look, if you're not going to get the effect out of that you think you're going to get, Phil, you know
look at
that
2020. It
it's
was the
just
same
not.
thing in 2020. The middle was persuaded that Trump was bad, and they supported Biden. So these things, these things can change.
You had a 100-year pandemic, Phil. You were in the middle of a 100-year pandemic where millions of people died. That was what helped Joe Biden more than
Yeah, but
anything.
actually, what helped him in that regard to that is that if Trump had immediately announced early on, this is a terrible thing, we got to fight it, this and that, I think he would have won that election because people respect that. That's leadership. But what that did was expose his lack of leadership because he tried to cover it up. He tried to downplay it, this and that. Oh, it's going to go away. And then he comes out with these ridiculous cures like whatever that horse food is or whatever the hell it was. Yeah, it exposed him as his weakness as a leader. And this is my belief, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not doing it, but I truly believe that if a bunch of people, peaceful protesters, stood out there in front of those tanks, and if Trump sicked the military and beat the hell out of them, do I think that would have had an impact on that middle? Yes, I do.
It just happened,
No,
Phil.
because I can tell
It just happened in L.A.
I can tell you,
It just happened in
yeah,
LA. It's
and I
happening
can
right.
tell you,
It just happened in LA. There was no need for Trump to send in any kind of forces.
Yeah, but
It was under
that's a
control.
little different from
It's
what
no,
he's
but it's
threatened to do.
exactly the point that Kevin is
He has
making.
said that if people protest, we're going to be, pardon my language, we're going to kick the shit out of them. That's
But
basically
what,
what he said.
but I agree with Kevin. The point that I believe that Kevin is making is sound. The conscience of America is not what it used to be. Just look around. I just told you that that's the new norm. Trumpism is the new norm. That's the way people now expect you to act as an elected official. And that middle, they think that's strength. And so if you think you're going to high ground Donald Trump, you are out of your
Well,
mind.
what about
You,
2020? How do you explain 2020? They
all I'm
reacted.
saying is you cannot high ground a person like Donald Trump in today's Republican Party. It ain't gonna happen.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm not talking about today's Republican
Donald Trump
Party.
lost in
That's gone.
Phil.
I'm talking
Donald
about the
Trump
people in the
lost in
middle.
2020
Because of COVID.
Donald Trump lost. Donald Trump lost in 2020 because of COVID.
How
His
he
mismanagement
responded
of
to
COVID.
COVID.
Because of how he responded. So
Yes.
so think about that,
It
Phil.
Right.
exposed his weakness in leadership. In the
And it took
middle, I
that.
don't mean the Republicans, the middle saw that and said, we're going with Biden.
But that makes the point. That makes
Yeah.
the point, Phil, is that we
Right.
saw all of the extraordinarily bad ideas that Trump made all the way through those years. But it took a 100-year pandemic and an all-time epic failure for them to move away from him. That is significant.
Well, let's put it this way. I think, and again, I think we agree what he shouldn't have done and what he did in L.A. But I don't know. I think that if you saw a demonstration of peaceful protesters, I mean, in fair,
It wouldn't be peaceful.
well, no,
and here's
I
what I'm
can't
going to
control.
tell. Here's
I'm
what I'm going
saying
to
if
tell
you
you.
had an
Here's where
MLK type leader.
Here's where you're underestimating. Here's where you're underestimating the
No, it's
machinations
not
of Trump.
MAGA.
And
I'm
this
not
is what I
talking
said.
about MAGA.
No, I said machinations
Okay.
of Trump. Is that you think that if they send peaceful protesters down there, that Trump is not beyond putting plants in the group to do something violent to give them an opportunity to respond to that.
Just
Look,
straight up.
Rand Paul said that he knows that Donald Trump right now is paying people, social media influencers, that the White House is paying people money to come and run him down online. So you think that they're not beyond paying folks to show up at a rally and throw a rock or do something that set the military off so that Trump can stomp on some heads? There ain't no way that Trump is going to allow them to get peaceful protests off, man. Come on,
The other
Phil.
thing is
You're smarter than
Well,
that.
let me ask you this: the violence in L.A., which he used as I mean, you think that was planned by Trump?
he
I
didn't
think that
just
was,
use it, he provoked it, Phil. He provoked it.
No. There's a difference. there's a difference between putting plants in there
It is
versus
a difference, and all
versus
of the
doing
above is
something that
true.
causes people, including a bunch of probably outside agitator type people.
Man, you got a wall
That's
of protest. Number one, you got to understand the constitution of these protesters. These are not weak individuals. That's number one. We got the wrong image in the head of these individuals to go out there. And so if you push anybody to the limit, they're gonna react.
What about
And
63? They were pushed to the limit.
many of them reacted.
They didn't react violently because they were told
Some
that.
of them did.
No,
And
they
in some
didn't.
cases
Come
they did
on.
not.
I'll read the history. Come on.
I mean,
You say the
we-
people who were boycotting that bus thing and the people in Birmingham that Martin Luther, that were going to jail, one busload after another, including kids. You're saying they reacted violently? That's
what I'm saying
ridiculous.
is I have images. There are images out there of those peaceful protesters being beaten. That's what I'm saying to you, Phil. And those
Exactly.
tactics,
And that is what changed the conscience of the country. Exactly.
and that's the point that Kevin was making, is that just because they're peaceful doesn't mean that violence isn't coming their way.
No,
And that's why
you're totally misunderstanding me. That's exactly, it is coming their way. Just like Martin Luther King knew violence was coming their way, but he knew
but
that
that
the
goes back to the
country,
question
he
you
knew
asked
the
Yeah,
vast
Kevin, though.
middle of the
First of all,
You asked question. Kevin made the point that he didn't think it'd be a good idea for people to get out there in front of those tanks, because basically what I agree with is that they're going to just get ran over, and it's going to be a TV show that Trump can go back to MAGA with. It doesn't matter whether they're peaceful or not peaceful. If you go out there, that's
MAGA
what
actually
it's
doesn't
already
decide elections.
staged. Just
The
like you
middle
said,
is what-
Martin Luther King staged these scenarios. The scenario's already been staged, and people know it. That's why they're not going out there in some cases, because they know that once they
people
do
who
it,
were
they're
demonstrating,
going to
I
be
would venture
attacked.
the
to, I would
people in
venture,
Birmingham
and
knew it was
Phil,
going to happen. That's why they rehearsed it
Phil,
as carefully as they did.
Phil, in these days and times, I'm going to tell you right now that if protesters show up there and they lay out in front of tanks, or they do anything to try to disrupt that parade, there are going to be a whole lot of people on the right who are going to say they got what they
I'm
deserve.
not talking about the
because
right. I am talking about I'll guarantee you this: when those things happen, just a second.
Okay.
When those things happen in
Phil,
Birmingham,
the narrative don't work. It don't work
in
the same. I
Birmingham,
keep trying to get you to
in
understand
Birmingham,
this.
the
You're talking
racist.
about an era. You're talking about an era where you had basically 3 TV networks and a handful of newspapers around the country that all report. We don't live in the same landscape that you lived in the 60s, Phil. You are living in some kind of, you're worse than the MAGA folks who want to bring back the good old days. We live in 2025. Do you understand how they're going to twist that narrative? You are not going to get the result of consciousness that
You
you
might
think.
end up in Guantanamo Bay the way things
Yes.
look.
Oh,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And so
You're right.
if I'm
You're
not
right.
willing to get out there, I'm not telling anybody else to get out there. That's how I look at it.
No, and that's fair. But that is fair. I'm in no position unless I'm willing to go there and lay my body down. Okay, that's a good point. I don't disagree with that. I guess where we all disagree is, and again, I'm not talking about the MAGA people, just like in the civil rights era, I'm not talking about the far right, the racists. They wouldn't care how many protesters got beaten or whatever. They don't care. They probably liked it. But I am saying, at least at that time, there were people who were really unaware of the discrimination and the violence that occurred in the South. And I believe as a result of his tactics, it opened the eyes of a lot of people, not the racists, but it opened the eyes of a lot of people who didn't know what was
Phil,
going on.
if you are living in America, if you are living in America today and you are unaware of Donald Trump, his tactics, and who he is, you're living in a rock somewhere. You're living in somewhere You're living in somewhere with no technology, Phil. You are delusional on this one, brother. I gotta tell you this much.
I'll take the vast majority of my friends, not all.
Yeah. You got a lot of your friends too, as you said on this podcast, who voted for Donald Trump anyway.
That's who I'm talking about.
And them beating on protesters ain't gonna change their mind, regardless of what.
Well, I'll tell you something. These friends I'm talking about, and I would say they're largely white evangelicals. Okay. I can tell you this, and this isn't true of all of them, but I've talked to these guys, and their knowledge, it isn't like they know about what's in that big beautiful bill, they don't know about all the stuff Trump said. They really don't. All they know, he's Republican, he's pro-life.
So whose fault is that, Phil?
It's
they
their
can't
fault.
read.
No,
they
it's their
can't.
fault.
Okay, so they're willfully ignorant, Phil. Willfully ignorant, and willfully ignorant people don't have a conscience.
No, I can't say that, because these are people who
they don't.
Well,
so,
with all due respect, I'm talking about guys who go off on. I mean, they're pretty honest, sacrificial guys. Go off on mission trips and stuff. They're not a bunch of right-wing nuts, okay? But I'll be honest with you. That's why I started my podcast. Really, is just so I knew there were people who know me and listen for a minute or two, whatever I do it for. And I'm just telling you, whether you call it willful or not, the vast majority of those people, they don't know. They don't know, for example, that in that big, beautiful bill is a provision that prevents federal courts from ever using contempt citations, which basically means the federal courts have no power to stop Trump. They don't know that.
Phil, here's what I'll say. And no diss to your friends. And I heard you say these are people who go on mission trips and all of that kind of stuff. And I imagine that's supposed to appeal to and tug on heartstrings. But I'm like, going on a mission trip, and I'm not saying that that's an easy thing, but going on a mission trip to another country and helping people that's an admirable thing. But then how do you come back home and support someone who cuts Medicaid for children, who does
these guys, if you ask them, they have no idea. They don't know anything about Medicaid.
Who are willfully ignorant about the actions of somebody that they voted for, who hurt their friends and neighbors here. So you want me to believe these good-hearted people care about some kid in a third world country, but they don't give a hoot about their own next door neighbor who's struggling? Come on, man. No conscience. And that's why what you talking about ain't gonna resonate. Right. I don't care if they rolled over 50 people with it.
Because the kind of media that these people you're talking about, Phil, that have put them where they are now, where they don't know anything other than Trump is trying to do good and cut federal funding, that media is not going to tell them the truth about how protesters were over.
I don't know that I don't know that they listen just to Fox or Newsmax. I don't think they even watch the news. Most of them, maybe a little bit they'll hear and there.
Okay, well then they won't even. Then they're not even a part of the conversation. Then I mean, these folks are non-factor.
What I'm trying to say is, and what I'm trying to say is that frankly, Martin Luther King recognizes, to get the attention of the vast majority of people who don't keep up with stuff, they have to see something so frankly horrific. Okay, and so that it wakes
black
them up.
People. I hear what you're saying, but black people are tired of being sacrificial lambs for America's conscience. We done with all of that. I didn't
say just black people should.
I'm just telling you, black people. We tired of all of that. We have given enough blood. What else needs to be done? I mean, what else do we have to give? So I
don't know why it has to do with black people. This is not a black-white issue.
Well, you were talking about the 60s. Those are black bodies.
Those were black people, though there's some white people among them as well.
Okay, and black. Right now,
but that doesn't change the point.
And right now, people of color are primarily under assault. And all I'm saying is people of color are tired of being...
I would disagree with that. I disagree.
How could you disagree with people of color being under assault when you see this mass deportation?
What's under assault is our freedoms, our democracy, and black, white, whatever we are.
Yeah, that too. That too, but
affects us.
People of color are 100% under assault. The whole anti-DEI movement is an assault on people of color. The whole anti-immigration movement is an assault on people of color. How many times do you see white-skinned immigrants being paraded to Guantanamo Bay on television? I still haven't seen any of that. So yeah, black folks, people of color are under assault. And as typical, when black people are under assault, typically democracy is under assault. So again, we tired of being the blood for sacrificing blood for America to reel up and realize.
But are you opposed to
realize that your neighbors are the real problems, not us?
Or just
all I'm saying is black people are tired of being the sacrificial lambs that makes good white folks wake up. Okay. You go wake your own folks up.
You guys, because I want to ask Kevin a question. Let me ask a question. The point is that you guys are making is that basically nothing's going to change because the people who vote for Trump watch Newsmax or whatever. They're not. Nothing's going to change. Then why, Kevin, did you say earlier that you think it's great that they're having these protests as long as they're
Whoever
in
said
other
nothing was going to
cities? If it's
change,
not going to change
but that
anything,
would
what's the point?
no one ever argued that
No,
nothing was going to change. But go ahead, Kevin.
My whole argument about this is you're talking about it'd be a great idea for people to show up and challenge Trump. I think that's a bad idea, and I'll tell you my reasons why. One, first of all, I wouldn't want to give Trump any more attention to his incredibly wasteful, egotistic military parade. The first thing I want to do is I want to let that spectacle stand alone so that I can show the American people what a colossal waste of money this is and what an ego stroke it is. And all I do if
But you're saying it's not going to change.
Let me finish my point. All I do is if I show up down there is I create more of a media ecosystem for Trump to milk. I'm not giving him that because that's what he wants. Instead, I'm going to go off over here and I'm going to do my own thing. And I'm going to, as much as I can, try to divide the media's attention, or at a minimum, force them to have to focus on two things at one time, which is going to diminish the attention that he's going to get. It's just a smart media strategy. Instead of allowing all the media from around the nation to descend on one place, right? I'm going to force you to spread your resources around, right? You're going to have to cover these No Kings rallies in all of these different cities, and that means less resources that they're going to be able to dedicate to Trump's ridiculous parade. Now, if I show up down there, Donald Trump, I'm going to give him exactly what he's looking for. And he is not going to let this get off as a quote unquote peaceful protest.
I know that.
There are going to be
There
are going to be some agitators there that are going to make sure something pops off. And when it does, you're going to have again a divide among the country. It's not going to be, oh, you're tapping into the consciousness, because what the narrative is going to be in the split are those who are going to say the violent protesters got what they deserve, and they're going to be the other people on the other side who are going to say, look at what Trump is doing, doing his dictatorial thing. Why even open that up? That's not going to serve. It's not going to change it. That's why I said it's not going to change anything. In fact, it has the potential to make things worse. That's my point.
Yeah, for me, I want to see some protests there, but I don't want to see the protesters like challenging or trying to get in front of the tanks or anything like that. I think 15 years from now when we look back, I want to see there were some people there with some damn sense that were protesting it. But to Kevin's point, everybody knows that the Trump administration is looking for excuses. They are looking for excuses to escalate their tactics. They're looking for excuses to take more power. They're looking for people to lock up because it plays well with MAGA. And so people are smart. Why play into it? There will be a time when we are all going to have to be in the streets. That time is coming. But this ain't it. This ain't it.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is smart. You don't and I've disagreed with people locally about how do you meet some of these protests, and I feel like when you give people like Donald Trump more media and what they want, that's what they want. And showing up there I think you send a stronger message by saying, you know what, we see this for what this is, the waste of money, the ego trip. And we just are not going to give you what you're looking for on this dude. We're going to go over here and do our own thing. And that in and of itself, to me, is a stronger message than showing up and giving this dude what he wants. Because let that thing speak for itself. I think if you just let it speak for itself, it says everything that it needs to say. You ain't got to show up for that. But that's just
I think you're spot on, bud.
I know there are a lot of people that disagree.
I think you're spot on, but I think you're spot on, man. You got to understand what you're dealing with. You're dealing with Trump, and it's crazy and it's wild and as outlandish as it may seem. He is a creature of headlines and attention. That's what a lot of this stuff is all about for him. So don't give him what he wants. I like it. Divert the attention. Don't play into it. Focus on something else. The worst thing in the world that can happen to Donald Trump is that the ratings are terrible. Now, that would kill Trump. That would kill Trump. He's a ratings whore. So
Absolutely, and they kind of do the same thing. I can't remember. I think this was during like one of the debates. This might not have been the most recent year. It might have been a previous presidential election. But you remember when Donald Trump was complaining about, oh, not getting a fair shake in the debates, and so he wasn't going to do one. And then Joe Biden decided, or whoever it was, decided that they were going to do something. And instead of just letting that stand, what did Donald Trump do? He said, well, I'm going to do a town hall for him. I'm going to do something that's going to compete against that. So I'm not going to let Joe Biden have all of this media attention, or whoever the candidate was. I'm not just going to let him have that all by itself. I'm going to do something that's competing and try to force the media to divert its attention. I think that's what these No Kings rallies are working into the same effect. Is you diminish the guy's presence. If you show up down there in mass, all that's going to do is put every media agency in the country is going to have to go to one place instead of, however many other places they got to go to now. It's an easy cover. And I can already tell you right now what the headlines would be out of that. 25 years of journalism experience, I can write the headlines right now for you, what they would be the next day.
Speaking of which, man, congratulations, bro. You just reminded me. You would tell everybody about your accolade?
Oh yeah, man. Well, thanks for bringing that up. I won first place for best commentary from the Cleveland Press Club. They hand out awards to news organizations all across the state of Ohio, and so I got a first place award for my commentary. A very humble honor, and just glad to know that the work I'm doing is being recognized on a higher level.
Great.
Hey, I applaud that. That
Absolutely.
is fantastic. I did not know that. Seriously,
most
congratulations.
Most def, man.
Congratulations.
Well deserved. I mean, Kevin makes the Inquirer better. Most definitely. One just in terms of like.
I appreciate.
No, seriously. I just watching. The more I read the opinion page, the more I realize, okay, you get a little bit of everything here. You get a little bit of this, you get a little bit of this. It's a nice range of like how people feel about what's happening locally and around the world. So I think it's a feather in the cap of the Cincinnati Inquirer. And I'm biased. I'm biased toward Kevin. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it that way. It is what it is. So yeah. People saying congrats. Absolutely, man. Congrats to Kevin. Again, I'll say it again. We are very privileged to have Kevin and Phil, and then all the people. I mean, all the people that come on the show are people that I think are assets. I'll put it that way, are assets to our community in a lot of different ways and just add to the conversation. So I'm just very appreciative of your time, bro, and appreciate, partnering with you to do this, man. You make it better. Most definitely.
Man, I appreciate it. And I say the same thing, man. Like, you don't do this stuff for the awards. You do it because you believe in the work, right? Like, I believe in people being informed. I believe in people having good information. Yeah, I share my opinions, and that's part of the job that I do. But the main thing is, all I just ask for people is just to be informed, to know your stuff. And if we can't see eye to eye on an issue, we come from different backgrounds, we come from different experiences. I get that. But, let's at least debate on some good information. Let's leave open the possibility that, that we might be wrong, and let's have a conversation. Like, I don't see anything wrong with us wrestling. I like to get in the ring and debate and wrestle a little bit. I think it's good. It challenges me, and I say all the time, there are plenty of days I walk away from this podcast after I've argued for an issue, and I'll sit down and I'll think about something one of you guys have said, and it will change my perspective. Right? I'll think about it, and maybe not in the moment. But trust me, I do think about these things, and that's why I think about the power of dialogue, why it's so important. And that's why I do stuff like this, and why I do what I do at the Inquirer, because I think that our ability to talk to each other, hammer it out, share ideas, that's how we get to that better place, for all of us.
Let me say something. Remember at the end of the show, as Nathan always says, okay, has anybody else got anything you didn't get to say? And I actually had something, this is last Tuesday, about that I want to say regarding our friend Nathan here. And I didn't because, no offense, one of you went off on something for about 20 minutes. It's like, okay, I think that's enough time. But I'm going to tell you now because it fits along with what you've been saying about what something. Every now and then on this show, somebody will say something that you sit and listen to, and you say that is a very, very profound truth, and I mean that. And last week, when Nathan was talking about people who make excuses for their life and blame it on immigrants coming in, and I thought he did a great job of saying that is so much crap. That people who came over, poor people from Mexico, that's the reason you aren't here. You don't have this job or that. I just thought the way you said that, I thought that was real powerful. So I
Okay,
just want to
appreciate that,
affirm
fam.
that.
Okay, all right, we might be cool again. Um,
That would be good.
let's talk about. Let me play this for you. This is a U.S. senator, Senator Alex Padilla from California. He was detained. I don't believe he was arrested, but he was detained forcefully because he was trying to end. Well, Kristi Noem, who is a Homeland Security Secretary, as you see right there. Some call her. What does they call her? They call her something Barbie. Anyway, she was having a press conference, and he entered as she was speaking and tried to ask questions multiple times. He approached where she was. There was obviously, if you're Homeland Security Secretary, you've always got security around you. And then he was detained. Check this out.
Mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this. Also, I want to talk specifically to the rioters and to the politicians in Los Angeles.
C-SPAN has a terrible camera spot.
I also want to talk about specifically.
All right, let me grab another one. That's a terrible camera spot from C-SPAN. Typically do a better job. I didn't get a chance to pre-watch this. Let me just kind of flash forward here. And
Yeah, there was one in the link that you sent us that was a little bit better.
Yeah, that was a better one. Let me grab that one real quick. My apologies. Give me 1 second, but you know where we are these days. Yeah, this is from, I believe, is it NBC? Yeah. Let's try to play this here. They've got a couple of ads. And then we'll get a chance to play it. But as we wait, I think you both have got a chance to see the video. Some are saying that the senator was in the wrong, that he tried to basically barge in and get his question in front of other people, and that her security was surrounding her, I guess a perimeter, and he was trying to get closer. And they were telling him to push back. And that's what led to him being forcibly detained. Others are saying that he was simply asking a question, and then, her thugs forcibly removed him because he tried to ask her a question, and because he's a Democrat and because he's a man of color. What do you think?
So I think that this is a perfect example of what I was just talking about.
I knew you were going to say that.
With the protests down in Washington, right? Or for the parade. This is exactly what this has the potential to be, and what the conversation and the narrative would be in the wake of that. Now, to some degree, I do think this was political theater. Like, I think the senator showed up, and I think that his intention was to disrupt that press conference. I do think that was his intention. It wasn't, I don't think he was just kind of trying to show up to quote unquote get his questions answered. Like, I think he recognized you got a whole room full of media there. I show up, I interrupt this press conference or whatever, and I start asking questions. I'm going to get some kind of rise out of it. Do I think he anticipated he was going to get what he got? No. But does that make the result any less sweet for him if he's from the Democratic standpoint? No, because now I get to say, look at how I'm being manhandled, and this is just more of what, Donald Trump and his regime, are capable.
So you're saying that it might change the narrative. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, because the Democrats get to stand up and do what they've been doing, is talking about, hey, this is just more of Donald Trump's bully tactics, and this isn't what we should be doing. And you got an elected official being manhandled and arrested. It's a bad look for Trump Nation. It's a good thing for Democrats to stand up and talk about and play on, the whatever they can get, whatever juice and mileage they can get out of this politically, right? So look, don't. Here's what I'll say: is don't underestimate the political theater. That's not an excuse for how he was treated. But let's understand, man, all of these politicians, whether it's Trump or whether it's the Democrats, they're all trying to do things to set the other side up to make their point. That senator knew when he showed up and interrupted that press conference that it was going to create a scene, and it did. And he got a little bit more maybe than what he counted on there. Not saying that was right. I would say the same thing to Trump people. Don't give him what he wanted, because they got exactly what they wanted. Now they got something that they can stand up and say, hey, this is just par for the course and the kind of government that Donald Trump wants to run. Now, I don't think it bothers Trump, because I don't think they have a problem sending that message. It started at the joint address from Congress when they marched Al Green out of there, when they called the sergeant at arms on him. Trump gets off on this type of thing. So I don't think they're bothered by it, right? It's not a good look, but I don't think they care, because I think that's the look that they want to portray.
So you think that he went there to cause a scene?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think. Well, I shouldn't say. I don't think he went there to necessarily cause a scene. I think he went there to get the media's attention. I mean, look, if you show up at somebody's press conference, and from what I could see from the video, it looked like Noam was still talking while he was trying to ask his questions, right? Which would be disruptive. If somebody is having a press conference and you start yelling things from the crowd, that's disruptive, right? That's disruptive. There's no argument about that. You don't do that type of thing unless you want to get something out of it, something from the media. And I just think, again, that's me as a cynical journalist looking at it. And I would say the same. I mean, look, Republicans do the same thing. Again, politicians gonna politic. That's what they do. And I think I think this was a case of political theater that got out of hand.
Yeah, there's a lot about that I just push back on. Like I don't disagree with you that when the senator went there, he knew that the cameras are going to be there. But that's the nature of the world they live in. I mean, he's an elected official. But I think you're burying the lead. The lead has nothing to do with Padilla. It's the fact that if we normalize this behavior, then essentially you're quelling and destroying freedom of speech. Like, this is a U.S. senator. Like, people elected him to confront and provide oversight, right, to the executive branch or to a federal branch. I mean, that's his job. This ain't just no regular Joe Blow walking up there. This is a U.S. senator. This is his job. And yeah, I'm sure there's been a lot of Republicans during the Biden administration that broke into press conferences. I don't remember any of them being tackled like that. This is something new. This is the beginning of the dictatorship that I keep telling everybody. You're already in it. You're in the early stages of it. The real question is, are we going to crawl our way back out, or are we going further into dictatorship? But we already there. And so here's just another example of it. If they can do that to him, then they can do that to anybody. You can never voice an opinion. What did he do wrong? Do they think he was really a threat? That's number one. This is a U.S. senator. They know who he is. He's no threat. So why are they getting hands-on with him?
Yeah, I definitely,
is no threat.
I definitely think, because I think it's the message. And again, you're right. Maybe what you say is more the lead in terms of I'm trying to frame a little context around it. I'm not saying that how he was treated or how he was handled shouldn't be alarming, or that it was appropriate, right? I guess I started out by saying, when you talk about what the narrative is, what some people are saying is he's disruptive, right? So, and then other people are saying, look at the way that he was handled. So that's the way that this is going to be. There are going to be people who are going to look at this and say, well, maybe he shouldn't have been arrested and handled, but hey, he disrupted that press conference, right? Like, this is what people do. This is what people do to justify. We talked about this on the last podcast. To justify the unjustifiable, they look for the off-ramp. The off-ramp was him coming in, busting in, disrupting this woman's press conference. Now, is that enough to be manhandled that way? No, I think most reasonable people would say not. But Donald Trump has been sending the message ever since he came down the golden escalator. Bust him in the head, rough him up. Donald Trump likes this. He don't have a problem with that message. He was probably sitting back with his popcorn and soda, McDonald's or whatever, watching this footage, loving it.
Because terrorists is somewhere loving it. They love to see Democrats brutalized.
Absolutely. This is so. Again, to Phil's people of conscience, how are they going to respond to this?
What did you mean, Kevin, when you said it's not a good look?
Well, I mean, optics wise, it's not I don't think it's a. I don't.
Whoa! I thought the whole point.
Phil, I don't think it's a good look. But that's me. Nathan just got done saying you got people like Terrace and other people who are gonna be cheering this on. My question
so
to
what
you
you're saying is,
where are your people of conscience on this?
See, maybe I when you said it's not a good look, I didn't realize you were talking about just yourself. I thought what you were saying was this is something that is going to bother a lot of people out there to see it when you say it's not a good look. But if you're saying, oh no, it's not going to bother anybody, it's just not a good look to me, that's fine. But that wasn't the way I understood it when you said it.
I think for most Democrats and people who are liberal or on the left or who have liberal leanings, they don't like it. It's concerned. It backs up the belief that they already have about Donald Trump and what he's trying to do. People on the right, people who support Donald Trump are cheering it. Yeah, good for him. What I don't know is where your, these people of conscience who are in the middle, I ain't heard from none of them. Where they at?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not trying to put you in a corner, but when you say it's not a good look, I felt that you were implicitly
I'm a person of conscience, Phil. I'm a person of conscience, so I'm gonna say it's not a good look.
But Kevin, you and let's say all the Democrats or all the anti-Trump people, they don't like him already. They can't stand him. It's not going to have changed anything for them. I just thought what you were saying when it's, quote, not a good look, is that this is something, maybe just a small something, but it's something that is going to hurt Donald Trump with this country. Now, but you're saying that's not true.
I thought
no, you
didn't. 6 should have been something that hurt Donald Trump with the country, but it didn't. It didn't. There were a whole lot of people who were able to be people of conscience who were able to be persuaded to vote for him. That's all I'm challenging you. I'm saying if you are truly a person of conscience, yes, Phil, I'm agreeing. If you are truly a person of conscience, this should hurt Donald Trump. What I'm telling you is those people of conscience who you think are people of conscience, I don't believe they are. And that's why I'm saying I don't think this is going to move the needle for those people.
Okay, well, let's put it this way. If in effect what you're saying is there's no sort of body of people of conscience, there's really no point in doing any kind of demonstrations, right? Because as you just said, it's not going to move the needle, so there's no point of any kind of demonstration.
I don't feel, I will admit to this, that I don't know what some people in this country have to see in order to be moved off of what Donald Trump is doing. I don't know. Evidently, we haven't seen it yet because there's still a whole lot of people who support this man. So regardless of what you say or what you feel, or that's what I'm trying to say. See, unlike you, Phil, I can divorce myself from how I feel and what I think and recognize that there are a whole lot of people out there, regardless of how I feel, who don't see it the same way that I see it. Even if I think that they would want to, and they want to pose like and pretend like they're people of conscience, but they still support this man. And that's what you're refusing to accept. Like these people are going to somehow miraculously have a change of heart. 34 felony convictions ain't done it. January 6th ain't done it.
Okay, but therefore, would you agree?
So tell me what miracle event is supposed to happen that's going to change these people's hearts and minds? Well, tell me what, a comet gonna hit the planet? Tell me.
Well, no. I'll accept your point that nothing's going to change, but therefore, would you then say there is no reason to waste
I
time
wouldn't say that to
protesting if
anybody.
nothing's going to change?
If you feel like protesting is something that is going to that I would never tell somebody that their efforts, if they believe
I
in
understand,
it,
but
was
you don't
wasted.
think it's going to make a difference.
I've
You
said
don't
for
think
a
it's going to
long
make a
time,
difference,
Phil.
right?
I've said for a long time, and I've said this on issues of black things here. I think the protests and the marches, I get why people do it, but me personally, I think it's a throwback to a bygone era. Politicians and people have figured out all I got to do is weather the protests. They ain't gonna be around long. When you talk about the civil rights, there's a difference between a protest and a movement. The civil rights era was a movement. They didn't just have a couple of protests here. This was a sustained effort over an amount of time. Politicians have figured out in America people don't have the bandwidth for that these days, or at least they haven't shown it. So all I got to do is wait you out. I'll let you do your little protest. I'll let you do this. I'll even throw in some agitators to muddy the water on the issue. I think you got to come up with new strategies, but that is one man's opinion. I would never tell an organization or individuals that if they want to march and protest, that that's a waste of their time. That's their tactic. Would it be mine? Probably not.
Well, I would certainly agree with you that we need a movement. So I agree with that. Just an aside, did you guys get a chance to listen to when Kristi Noem was testifying in front of whatever Homeland Security Committee or something? Did you see when one of the senators asked her, "Can you tell us what habeas corpus is?" Did you guys see that? This is like about 3 weeks ago. She's in front of a congressional committee, I think it was a Senate committee, and one of the I think who it was, one of the female senators, Democratic senators, said to her, "Can you
Yeah.
define habeas corpus?"
And
Just
she
like that.
defined it as Trump's
Okay.
right to
And
deport
she,
people.
yes, no, the right to. She said it's the right of the president to arrest people, basically. Okay, which is, I guess that senator, to her credit, probably figured that this woman was so lacking in knowledge or so ignorant that she wouldn't know that answer. But um, the fact that she not only didn't know what habeas corpus was, she's the head of Homeland Security. She doesn't know. It's a fundamental tenet of American democracy. And she thought it was just the opposite. I mean,
Yeah.
go ahead, play this.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am.
suspend their
Habeas
right to.
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
Habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents.
I mean, she doesn't need to know. All she needs to know is who is in charge, and that's Donald Trump. That's it. These people that are in control of our government right now have contempt for government. They despise government. They're not there to try to make government work better for the people. They're there to destroy it and to rig it so that their donors can forever always be in charge and do whatever they want to do. So she doesn't need to know. Habeas what? What's that mean? That means nothing to her at all.
Well, let's put it this way. I think it reflects, not only the complete lack of moral compass for the people that he has appointed, but you can have people like, there are brilliant people that support Donald Trump. There really are. There were brilliant people that supported Adolf Hitler. Okay, I'm just making the point that these are not only sycophants, they are ignorant. They are just incompetent
Some
and
are,
ignorant.
some are, as you said, brilliant. They have a deeper plot, and they're riding.
I'm not saying that. No, no. I'm just saying there are brilliant people. I would say by
Yeah, I'm
and
saying the
large,
people around
by and
Trump
large, the
are,
cabinet.
yeah, it's a mixed bag. You've got some people who are like Pete Hegseth and Christy Nome, right? But you also got some people that have a deeper plan and a deeper plot, and they're using the Trump administration almost like a Trojan horse to enable their new world order of what they have for the federal government. And these people are long-term thinkers. They are very highly intelligent and highly resourced, and we are in a lot of trouble. Because even if a Democrat wins, who knows? It could take decades to undo the damage that was done during the Trump administration. And we know how fickle voters are. We keep seeing the same cycle. Trump, a Republican gets in there, breaks everything. A Democrat gets in there, fixes everything, but he doesn't do it fast enough. A Republican gets in there. It's the same cycle over and over again. So we're on a very dangerous trajectory that, unfortunately, at this point, I'm trying to see the silver lining within my lifetime. You know, after I'm gone, maybe this situation might right itself. But for right now, we's in trouble. We's in trouble. We got a rough ride ahead of us. And it's just what, the 5th month, the 6th month?
Yeah, you're not even through an entire year,
Not even through an entire
of his
year.
presidency. You got 3 more years. You got 3 more years left. I mean, and he's already done an incredible amount of damage. I mean, and this has been about a decade long thing now. Ever since he came on the, it's not just about what he's done in the last 5 or 6 months. It's about what he's done ever since you know the Obama birtherism. He came onto the scene with that type of stuff. It's like Trump has been a cancer on this country that is just continued to spread and metastasize. And just the question is going to be, you know, how much more is it going to spread? Is it going to be fatal? Is it going to be terminal? Or are we going to somehow find a way, to cut him out or, irradiate his influence and what he's trying to do to destroy our institutions and you hit the nail on the head, Nathan. Trump always talks about people who hate America, right? He always tries to villainize people on the other. They just hate America, right? They don't no. The real people who hate America are the Steve Bannons and all of these people who Trump surrounds himself with or are in that ecosphere. They hate America and the principles it was founded on. They want to burn it down and create something new. That's not loving America. That's destroying America and then
Right.
building something else that's not America, right? Like that's not love for America. In fact, that's the worst form of contempt is to say we want to burn it down and start something new. That means you don't believe in America. And that is the messaging that many folks miss behind this. And it ain't about make America great again. I think there are some people who believe in that message, but the people who are working with Trump on this, they ain't trying to make America what it was. They're trying to make it something different entirely.
100%. Correct the mundo. People just don't understand what the plot is, but it's the world we are in right now. So that's all I got, folks. That's all I got, fellas. Thank you so much for your time. Any
Hey man,
last words?
yes, I do. I have to say this before we get out because it was the one thing you sent us that I just could not leave this podcast without saying something about, and that's Rand Paul. That's Rand Paul crying about being disinvited from the White House picnic. I'm actually gonna write a column about this because I just thought it was so on so many levels. I thought it was revealing. I thought it was funny, and I also thought it was tragic at the same time. Here's a man who was crying about not being invited to the White House picnic, and oh, my grandson's not gonna be able to go to the White House picnic, and my family, and we were looking so forward to this, and Donald Trump is so petty, and he's waging war on my family, and over a picnic, bruh. This dude is hurt because Donald Trump disinvited him to the picnic. And so this is the thing. In his own words, Rand Paul, I've lost a lot of respect for the president of the United States behind this. So it wasn't January 6th
that you lost respect for him. It wasn't 34 felony convictions that you lost respect for him. It wasn't for him making fun of handicapped people or saying that Haitians in Springfield was eating pets. None of that, dude, caused you to realize how petty, vindictive this guy was, and didn't cause you to lose respect. But this, not getting invited to the White House picnic, this was the thing that made you wake up to Donald Trump's pettiness and waging war on your family? Look, let's talk about all of these families that he's breaking up and separating and deporting people. You didn't shed a single tear. You didn't talk about the war that he's waging on immigrant families. You didn't talk about the war that he's waging on poor and impoverished families here in the country, in this country, by some of the things that he's doing. But dude, he's waging war on your family because he disinvited you to the White House picnic. This is the type of stuff right here. If you
See,
support the Republican Party, this is the type of stuff right here where they spitting right in your face. This guy is crying about not getting invited to the picnic, and you struggling trying to figure out how you gonna pay your medical bills, how you gonna afford the price of eggs. And he's mad because his little grandson ain't gonna get to run around the White House lawn. These dudes, man, they something else. I just couldn't let that go. I'm gonna get off my high horse now, but I just couldn't leave this podcast without going on my Rand Paul rant because I just thought
Well,
I'm sitting there watching this
I'll
dude's
just say,
video, and I just wanna be like, for real, this is what. And then he had the nerve to say this last thing. I hope somebody asks some questions about this, like imploring to the press, like we ought to be dogging Donald Trump at the press conference about why he ain't invite Rand Paul to the White House picnic. Not that we shouldn't be asking questions about Donald Trump getting a plane from Qatar. Not that we shouldn't be asking questions about Donald Trump's family making deals with the Saudis before he show up there. None of that. We shouldn't be asking questions about none of that, but we should be asking questions about him not getting invited to the White House picnic. Come on, man.
well, let me say something from my low horse. Uh, Actually, I thought, Kevin, speaking of powerful moments, I think what you just said was about as powerful as anything I've heard. I'm serious on this podcast. I agree with every word. And I kind of missed that contrast between him. I've never been a fan of his, but between him going along with all these horrific things and then being upset about this, I think those are great points. The only thing I'd say is it's kind of a Dale Carnegie thing where I forget how he says you should affirm every improvement, okay? And despite everything that you said, that it is at least he, and I'll even say this about Massey and uh, the guy up in Butler County. I'll think of his name in a minute. At least those guys and him at least took a stand against piling on more debt. Over 2.4 trillion debt that this bill is going to pile on. At least he took a stand against that, and it doesn't excuse any of the facts that he stood by while all these other horrific things were done. But I guess I just feel it's worth when somebody does that. So, I mean, that itself hurts him politically because he's going to have Trump after him. But so I at least want to give him credit for at least on
yeah,
that
I give
doing
him
the
credit for
right
that
thing.
as well. But you know what, Kevin? One thing is clear is that you clearly have never been to a White House picnic, man. They got the best barbecue, free drinks. Snoop and Nelly are going to perform.
Well, how do you
I had a
know?
couple
How do you
buddies that went
know?
a couple
You
years
been
back. They
there?
said it was a heck of a
Oh,
time, man.
okay.
So I think you're grossly underestimating just how much of a good time it is. So I understand why Rand Paul is he's got his feelings hurt. Trump hurt his feelings, and then look at this weakling. If it was me, I just would have ate it. You do a press conference talking about how you're hurt. You just play right into Donald Trump's hands, man. Come on. So, God. Anything else, guys? Anything else on your mind before you roll out?
That's it, man. Happy
Is it?
weekend to everybody. Thanks to everybody.
If I change my mind this about the protest this weekend, I will agree to be the on the ground, if that happens, the on the ground
Good.
correspondent for
Thank you. I
Hot
appreciate
Mike.
that. You gonna go
That's
live on
not good
Facebook?
enough, Phil. That's not good enough. If you go
Oh,
down there, brother,
I know it's
anything,
not good enough.
anything
I know
short,
it's not good
anything
enough.
short of you laying down in front of a tank is gonna be a disappointment, man.
I agree.
I don't want no correspondence from the parade. I want action, brother. If you are not climbing on the turret, hanging off the barrel, I'm gonna be disappointed.
And you know something? I'm disappointed in myself for not being able to do that. And I'm kind of serious. I'm actually serious about that. But thank you for your support,
listen,
Kevin.
thank you
Happy
to the
Father's
audience for
Day
being here.
to both of you gentlemen as well.
Oh, thank you
Hey,
so
yeah.
much. Yep. Have Father's Day.
Okay.
Looking forward to it. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Hot Mike. Take it easy.